Jesse Lewis here, Jesse Lewis Show, and today I have JP Maroney. He's a business guy, but we started off the show before everything else with a simple question, and I gave him a heads up on what the question was if he saw what it was. JP, what is your favorite sandwich if you can only have one sandwich for the rest of your life?
The rest of my life is going to have to be Philly steak.
That's a hell of a good sandwich. Wow.
There's actually a place here in Indian Harbor Beach that makes a really, really good one, and they deliver, which is making me think this is going to be a good idea for today.
Well, I'm glad I got you somewhere. Speaking of getting people somewhere, you are a serial entrepreneur. You're a business guy. Can you tell us about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, it's funny because I think one of my bios out there, because I was on a podcast Saturday, and one of my bios out there says that I've been building companies for 25 or 26 years, and I looked, and it's 30 years. So started my first company when I was 19 years old, and I remember actually back a little bit further than that when I was in high school, driving around in Tyler, Texas, looking at buildings as a teenager, wondering which of them would be big enough to house my business empire someday. And of course, at the time, I was broke, driving a '78 Pontiac Le Mans with a headliner hanging down and a broken gear shift held together with a coat hanger. But I had these big ideas and big dreams, and that started a journey that now has lasted 30 years. And obviously, we've had some successes, we've had some learning experiences, shall we call them, and plenty of setbacks, and certainly opportunities to grow. And yeah, here we are today. I'll be 50 this year, so it's been quite a ride.
So, holy cow, 30 years of building business. That's awesome. So, in those 30 years, do you think, just from your own experience, do you think the entrepreneurial spirit has grown since you began? Not just in you, but in society in general? Or do you think it's kind of waned off in the last few years?
That's a great question. I think the word entrepreneur wasn't necessarily a good thing in general circles 20 years ago. It wasn't that being an entrepreneur was a bad thing, but for some reason that word was like, can't get a job, so had to do something else, right? So entrepreneur has become more sexy, I think, in the last decade, certainly with the gig economy and the internet making the world flat and allowing people that are in one geographic area to reach out and offer an ultra specialized service across a wide audience over a larger geographic area. So it has changed the landscape. But it's an interesting question because I've been on a lot of radio shows over the last 3 months, 2.5 months, and I've been saying this. I believe this with our current situation with COVID-19, aka coronavirus, and the isolation and people having the setback of losing their job or being furloughed or being sent home, etc., and many of those companies closing and will never open their doors again. I think that the average American, and perhaps where you're at, Canadian, I don't know, but the way I feel about it here is that the average person is no longer going to look at employment the same way they did in the past. Meaning they're not going to trust it as much. They're not going to believe that it, or take for granted that it will be there when they need it. And I think the entrepreneurship or the entrepreneurial spirit has ignited and will continue to build bigger and brighter in our world, because I think people will start to look at side hustles and other gigs and things as a fallback, if nothing else, but certainly a way to insulate themselves and mitigate against the risk of another downturn and losing their job.
So, the big thing after this COVID stuff happens is we can see a lot of companies never opening back up or never opening their offices back up. Why would an accounting firm have a $2 million per year rent building when they don't have to, when they can send their worker home with a laptop and stuff like that? Where do you see the automation and the home working stuff happening? What direction do you see that going?
I have some colleagues and professional associates, people that I know who are heavy into commercial office space, and I have predicted and said to them and others that I think they're coming for a rude awakening, because I believe a lot of companies that have now gotten that little taste of remote work are going to go with it as the norm in their businesses. And if not all of their employees, many of their employees. I think it was Twitter the other day, the CEO of Twitter, that put out a comment that their people aren't required to go back to work right now, and many of them will never be asked to go back to work at the office. They'll be able to work from home indefinitely. I believe more and more companies will do that. I think it's going to change the business travel industry and the business event industry, because many companies have now realized, well, we don't have to get on a red eye and fly across the nation for a meeting that lasts an hour and a half and then fly back home. We can do this with a video conference call like you and I are doing here today. I have team members that work for Harbor City Capital, which is our company, and we've never even met in person before. So we're now in our 7th year of Harbor City's operation, and we've got people that have been with the team since as far back as 2015. And several of those people I've never met. They're in other countries, and I have people that are in other parts of the United States that are on our team that I've never met. So I think it's going to change things dramatically. Events, certainly there's a place for conferences, expos. In fact, it's my daughter's fiance. He works for a robotics company and he's in sales. It's part of his job to go to these trade shows and help exhibit, answer questions, etc. And during this, they had some of their events that were canceled, and some of them were transformed into virtual expos. And I know he was sitting there manning the virtual booth, and he said the traffic to the virtual booth was pretty limited. They did end up getting some leads out of it and people that wanted to have a deeper conversation. And I think that's partly mindset. I think it'll take people some time to come around to those ideas. And I think there will always be an opportunity for physical meetings, physical conferences. I'm certainly a huge advocate of networking and face-to-face, belly-to-belly talking, meeting with people out in the trenches. So I think there'll always be a place for that, but I do believe the industry is going to shift dramatically. But back to your point, a lot of office space, I think, is going to be vacated permanently and will sit empty because the companies simply found that this might just be a better way of doing business.
So with it being empty, say this thing, we expanded out for 5 years. Do you think they'll be transferred over to housing if that happens? Or because there's a lot of problems it could solve if there's just buildings that are sitting empty all the time, right? It could solve half the housing crisis that both our countries have, right? Which sounds a little liberal, but realistically, why not?
Right. So I can't speak to the housing crisis, but I can speak to conversions. If you look at some of our large shopping malls in America, I don't know about Canada, but some of our large shopping malls are being converted into housing right now, apartments. And so where they're losing some of these big anchors, and I noticed during the last 2 weeks, there's been some more announcements of large stores that are closing their doors permanently. I heard Victoria's Secret's closing its doors permanently, so that's kind of interesting. There's several businesses, Bath and Body Works maybe I heard. The other day I heard that, I'm trying to think of the other one, but there have been quite a few companies that have announced recently that they're closing all of their stores. Retail's taking when I say taking a hit, it's just a transformation. I don't think as an entrepreneur, a business builder, a CEO, you can sit around and try to fight the tide. You can't push the water back up the waterfall. You can't put the feathers back in the pillow. It's over. The world has changed, and you have to be willing to adapt to that. To that point, I remember I refer to this a lot, but like Blockbuster Video, for example, which was a mega organization with a great roll-up that was put together by Wayne Heising and his team many years ago. But I've talked about Blockbuster, and I think that the idea that they fell in love with a business model and didn't fall in love with their customer and solving problems for their customer, otherwise they could have pivoted. I think the brand Blockbuster could have stood for entertainment and been an icon for many years to come had they been willing and seen around the corner and been willing to pivot and stay focused on solving problems for customers and not fall in love with a business model. So I think that companies right now that are, whether it's office spaces or retail, You've got to be able and willing to pivot and change with the times and stay focused on serving your customers. And to that point, I think if you are going to try to maintain some sort of a boots on the ground operation, what we call a bricks and mortar operation, then you have to be able to offer some sort of value and or differentiation that is not available and not replicatable in a digital environment. So you have to be willing and able to, let's say, go out and measure somebody's property and then design the cabinets or whatever for their building, which companies will do. We had a guy out measuring for some granite the other day for some bathrooms and a desk credenza that we're putting in. So same type of thing. And you say, well, eventually that could be replaced because somebody could take their iPhone. Some of these apps, you could take a phone and scan a room and it could produce a 3D model and all of that. So you just have to stay out there and be willing to evolve with the times.
What would you like to promote on the show today? What would you like to talk about personally that you want to get out there?
Well, listen, I'm a big advocate for investors and business owners. We work with a lot of both, thousands of business owners and investors that are on our list and read our emails, and many of them are our clients and customers. So, we're always looking for how can we serve audiences at a higher level. Certainly, if someone is looking, very appropriate for the discussion we've just had, someone's looking for some predictability and reliability in their investments, they really should take a look at what Harbor City is doing right now and the secured bonds that we created. And we created a special page just for that product. It's called securedbonds.com, secured, bonds.com. And go check that out and take a look at it. If you're a retail, an individual investor, or maybe you're even a family office or a high net worth individual, and you're looking to create predictable, reliable yield without the volatility of the market, something that's non-correlated to the market where you can rely on current monthly income every month, and you don't want to get into real estate and take toilet calls in the middle of the night, then our secured bonds product is something to definitely take a look at. But we're big advocates in saying, how can we help and support the community? So whether you're a business owner or investor and you need help, you need advice, you need assistance, you need, maybe you're a business owner, you're trying to figure out how to navigate this coronavirus situation, the isolation, you're trying to figure out how to pivot your company, restart your business. We have skill set within our company that is extremely powerful with being able to sell on the internet. We've been honing that skill since the early 2000s and are very, very good at it. We work with a lot of business owners and companies that need to generate leads on the internet, need to get more customers on the internet. And we're always willing to have a conversation, no strings attached, of how you could adapt or use the internet to better acquire clients and leads for your business. And I'm happy to take those kind of conversations at any time.
So just an example of that, let's take a random business, any random business, pick one. How do you find leads for somebody, or what's the base process for like a lawyer or a dentist or something like that about how they would work with you to find leads?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I've been building companies, as I said in the beginning of the interview, for 30 years, but my first website we built, I think I registered my first domain in 1996 when I had the magazine publishing company. We were publishing magazines for the 50-plus market. We built a website which was sort of the equivalent of what we would use for a blog today. So it was an online magazine. We had a print magazine, but we created an online equivalent of it. So I was familiar with the internet as a tool and a mechanism, but not so much for marketing until around 2001, 2002, when the light really went on for me that in traditional advertising for client acquisition, offline, you didn't always know what was working. Now, if you were a savvy marketer, you would put mechanics in place to track what you did. So if you were in the phone book, I don't know if anybody remembers what those look like. They're pieces of paper with people's phone numbers in them. But if you were in the yellow pages of the phone book, you would potentially put a tracking phone number that was different than your main number that rang to your main number, but it would track the number of calls that you got from the phone book. And therefore, you could directly correlate the number of new calls or leads that came in from your business. And maybe you had a script that your receptionist would say, and how did you hear about us? And they'd put a little tick mark next to whatever the source was, Yellow Pages or a flyer that you'd put out, etc. So there was potential for tracking, but it wasn't perfect. When I discovered the internet, to me it was the holy grail of client acquisition, because everything on the internet is measurable and trackable back to who it is that clicked, where they came from, the website they were on when they heard about it, saw it, if they were searching on Google or Yahoo or something, or if they were on usatoday.com and saw an ad and clicked from that ad. Or in our case, we run a lot of YouTube. If they're on YouTube and they see a video, we know not only that they came from YouTube, we know which video they were watching. We passed those, what they call variables, through. We know which campaign it is, which video it was, so we know what targeting we had in that particular campaign, and we can correlate it back to that. Everything is measurable and trackable. So the big aha or epiphany for any business owner should be, if I'm going to invest in client acquisition, and every business owner should be doing this on a daily basis, investing real dollars in client acquisition. If I'm going to do it, then I want to do it in a place that is more efficient and allows me to track and measure every single click and every single visitor, and then ultimately every lead and customer. And the internet gives you that capability. So that's the big epiphany for most business owners, is that, wow, this thing really works. My chief of staff, Danny McCabe, was on his way to the office yesterday. And when he got into the office, he said, JP, it happened. I was like, what happened? He said, I was listening to one of my favorite talk shows on YouTube. I like to listen to those conservative talk shows. I was listening to this talk show on YouTube, and all of a sudden this ad came on, and it's like, such and such and such, 12% returns, fixed rate, bonds, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wait a minute, that's us. That's our ad. It was our ad that I heard. How did that happen? And so I explained to him how our targeting works, and I also explained to him how retargeting works. So, you're asking, how does a dentist or a doctor? Every person that's going to your website, you should have the pieces in place, and we can share with someone in a much longer setting how to do this, but you can put the pieces in place to put what they call a cookie, a pixel, onto that person's computer, so that then everywhere they go on the internet, you have the ability to put an ad back in front of them, whether it's YouTube or Google or some news site or anything, put an ad back in front of that person and keep reminding them that you're there so that you can get them to make a decision. There was, going back to this whole tracking thing, there was a guy named Wally Waddles that was in advertising many, many years ago. This is back in the 20th century, right? But Wally Waddles was in advertising, and he said, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. I just can't figure out which half. Well, in the internet space, you don't have to wonder. You know exactly. We can go into our campaigns, and we built an entire business model, investment strategy around this idea with lead generation. But you can go into your advertising panel, and you have all these different campaigns broken out and these ad sets broken out by demographics and who you're targeting and what websites it's showing on, etc. And you can look and see exactly what's working and exactly what's not. And we built a strategy we call test, scale, manage. So I would really encourage people, if they've not been exposed to online advertising, reach out to us. We'll walk you through the idea. But if you haven't been exposed to it, to understand that with digital or online advertising, you have the ability to test extremely small. You can put $5 or $10 or $20 a day to work advertising in front of your target audience. You can try different audiences, test different things. And then we have this test, scale, manage. So when we're in a testing campaign, we will look at it every day and see who is responding, who's clicking through, who's ultimately registering or opting in or buying the product. And then the ones that are not, so I want to give you a real example in a moment, but the ones that are not, we just eliminate the budget to those people and double down on the ones that are. So let's say that you and I went into that imaginary business you were talking about, and we wanted to help that dentist office. Well, we might say, we would talk to them up front and say, well, what does it normally cost you to acquire a client? So that's your client acquisition cost. What's the lifetime value of a client? We have a formula we can give people for that. And so they figure out what the value of a client is over their lifetime, so you know what you can invest to get a client. And I use the word invest because it's the number one investment that every business owner should be making, because it brings you revenue over the lifetime of that customer. So as long as you're acquiring clients for less than what you're getting back, you're in positive ROI. And so you go out there and you test small and you try things to see what's going to work. And you will very quickly see, well, men are responding to this ad, but women aren't. Well, guess what? You don't spend any more money putting that ad in front of women. And then you see men over 45 are responding, men under 45 are not. Guess what? Take away the low end, put it up on the high end, and keep double downing. And so when I was a kid, I used to go and spend the summers in East Texas and Tyler. That's before I lived there, but my grandparents lived in East Texas. And I went and spent my summers, rubbing and walking around and running around in the red dirt of East Texas. And my granddad every year would prune, or every couple of years would prune his holly bushes. And he had these hedges of holly bushes. And I would go and look, and they would look like he had killed them. I'm like, what did you do? That's down to just the stalks almost left. And then you'd come back a few months later, and it'd be these beautiful bushes with perfect green, perfectly formed, no burned edges on the leaves, and the red berries, holly berries, just bright red and beautiful. That was pruning. You had to take away the dead stuff to be able to let the good stuff grow. And digital advertising is exactly like that. You prune away what's not working, you water and feed and double down on what's working, and that's how you create a successful campaign.
You talk about the demographics, and just so people know, this stuff isn't hard. It's kind of what I do with my own personal 5 businesses that I have. It's not hard to do. And what was your company one more time, if people are interested in getting more information?
Yeah, Harbor City Capital, but you can go to harborcity.com. If they want to connect with me personally, you can find a way through there to connect with me, but you can always fill out a form at harborcity.com and say, hey, I got a business. I'd like to talk to somebody about getting more leads or growing my business online. And one of our team members will get back to you. People can always connect with me. We can hook them up in the link later or whatever, but they can connect with me in LinkedIn. I'm on every platform as JP Maroney. You can see my name on the bottom of this thing. I'm either at or hashtag or whatever, JP Maroney, Facebook, YouTube, across the board. We have a ton. In fact, Jesse McMahon, our video guy, is here running live video today on this. He has built a ton of content for us on both the JP Maroney channel on YouTube and the Harbor City channel on YouTube that has a lot of great videos and information. But they can reach out to me on harborcity.com, jpmaroney.com. It's pretty easy.
Awesome. So anybody who's looking for investment stuff or business stuff, please go check out JP stuff. There's probably something there for you no matter what. JP, we always end the show in one way, and that's, I need to ask you, what have you done for yourself? Not for anybody else, and not this interview, because let's face it, this has been a pretty good interview, actually. What's one thing you've done for yourself today to make yourself happy?
What's interesting is that my wife and I talk about this. I have a mission statement that's 3 parts. It's make money, make memories, and make a difference. And I believe that in life, you have to make money to be able to do the things you want to do, help the people you want to help, give to the causes you want to give to. So you have to have money. You can't sit around every day worrying about lunch money, right? You've got to have some base foundation of income. And so I run hard, I work hard. Members of our team know I'm up at weird hours of the day and night, and so we do work hard, but we also play hard. And so that's something that today, we're about halfway through our day. Most everything that I've done today when I got up this morning was all about work. I think if you said what I do for me, I probably made a pot of coffee, but that's mine. So this is banana nut coffee from Coffee City, USA in Tyler, Texas. So that's what it did for me. But it's making memories with those that you love and care about, and then ultimately making a difference. That's the reason I do these podcasts like this, is I believe that we only have a limited amount of time here, and the footprint or the thumbprint that you leave when you're gone is all that you're going to be remembered by. And I believe that you've got to give before you get, and so we're out there trying to give back to other people as much as we can. And I tell you what, that is a selfish thing. So if you said, what did you do for me? Because I believe the more you give, the more you will get in return.
And it's not always financial. There's way more benefits to giving than just the finances, right? So
that's exactly
JP,
right.
I want to thank you so much for coming on. We end the show in one simple way. I need you to wave bye and just say bye to everybody. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.